All right, so this is building query for September 11, 2020. And I think what we want to focus on is talking about some of the updates to the Qri Python client, which we've kind of built up in with the motivation of supporting work that people want to do with query data sets via Jupyter notebooks and other sorts of platforms and tools and programs. So B5, is this you next?
Totally, I can take it. There's actually, I think what we have, the other thing I'd add to the agenda maybe quickly is just doing a quick review of our sprint, because this actually concludes sprint R for us, which is kind of nutty. So before we jump in on the Python stuff, I just want to quickly review sort of what we did this sprint. I've pulled up the project in front of me. This sprint, we really focused a bunch on turning around user feedback really quickly. And so there's a few things that I think I'd love to just share a screen and call attention to if others are cool with that. First, I'm going to do that and then share a screen. So for anybody interested in following along at home, this is our sprint board for Sprint R. We have a lot of stuff going on, some of which you may be worth sort of checking out, but most of the emphasis this sprint went into the Python client and into the API, actually, along with a number of other sort of like research-based things we've been working on. But the big emphasis, as I mentioned before, was sort of getting as much as possible in on this sort of like turning around quickly on user feedback. And so we spent a bunch of time in our Discord channel working with Nathan and Shan, trying to get query remotes working a little better. And if you want to play with that at all, we have a secret, not so secret remote setup that you can push to. And I can show you the repo that talks through that. Because we're going to be doing a lot more formal work around this, around running a remote. And we spent a bunch of time working with Nathan to, is that not right? Query.io. Am I not good at spelling? Oh, Quoro. 1 second. And in this repo, we're sort of developing with Nathan a set of instructions for actually setting up a remote, which is basically a place that you can push query data sets to that is in Query Cloud. And we spent a whole bunch of time in chat on the Discord, sort of working through what a remote should be, how it should work, and make sure any issues sort of work out. We even have an outstanding issue that we have to deal with here, which is a wonderful sort of like indication that we're continuing to turn around stuff. But we shipped a web UI for Query, which is a sort of like revamped idea mainly for remotes so that we can get something that looks a little like Query Cloud's experience on remotes. And then, yeah, spent a whole bunch of time iterating there. And the other main place we spent a bunch of time iterating was on the API, which now has these new sort of API endpoints that we can punch in that make life a lot easier. We're going to be forthcoming with a bunch of documentation of the API, but the thing you can do today, I think actually, can we even just pull up Holger's notebook? I think I was looking at it before. Yeah, and so Holger, who's user Discord, has been using the API to actually ingest query data across into other services like Observable Notebook to actually visualize it. And so we look here, my German isn't excellent, but I can definitely read query.cloud, and I can definitely see this d3.csv ingest, which is coming from the cloud API endpoint. And that's actually what's populating this map. So this is query data that we're seeing right now. This is the body.csv, and this is a place in Stuttgart, I believe, that is checking yellow cards, which are reports from, these can be like suggestions for changes from citizens or local sort of subway users. And Holger's been awesome. He's been working through a whole bunch of really cool stuff using query data and posting query data. And so we can actually see that really quickly. I think it's worth shouting at the data set itself, which is on query.cloud. And this be the one. He actually just bothered to sort of explain this to us in English, which is delightful of him. But it's really cool. And so a lot of this was sort of just like a lot of iterating in Discord. So if you're watching this call and you want to sort of see query work a little better, we spent a lot of time this week just trying to get as much progress as we could made on Discord. And on top of that, the last thing we should note is in the announcements section, we actually did ship query 0.9.12. And that includes, one of the most important things that includes is support for pulling from remotes, which we actually realized we didn't have in place, and automatic getting. And so there are two things you can do now with the query CLI, which is you can do query.pull -- remote and say, hey, go get it from over there instead of somewhere else. And if you want to try that out, you can try it with that doug.query.cloud remote, which you'll have to configure using the instructions that we mentioned earlier. But doug.query.cloud has a list of data sets, and you can see them here. I haven't installed any cool stuff on this machine to make the JSON pretty, but I promise this is a list of data sets. So I think that covers the sort of like main stuff from Sprint-R. Rico, Asmir, Ramfox, do you have anything you'd want to add to that?
There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, especially around bug fixing, like really nasty small bugs that kind of interrupt the flow. So that's good, I guess.
Yeah, nothing that concerns the outside world, probably, immediately.
Yeah, we've been spending a bunch of time working on Query Cloud, making it work a little better, which is just what everybody means by behind the scenes. There's no special stuff other than make Query Cloud work better. But yeah, with that, I think that was the sort of big update and sort of what's been going on. Next week, we're going to continue to do more of the same, or next sprint. And so we're looking to sort of just continue to drill down on some of these flows, clean stuff up, and really deliver sort of better experiences for anybody who shows up and starts using Query. So if you're interested, now's the time. We'd be delighted to make sure that Query works best for you. Yeah. And I think with that, we should probably just move into Python client stuff, which is the other thing we spent a bunch of time working on this sprint. And Daniel, I know you had some interest, and you just mentioned that you sort of just jumping on the call to catch up. Is there anything specific that we can sort of talk to you or speak to you about in terms of making your involvement in the Python client project a little easier?
No, I mean, at this point, I've just been poking at things that seem like, you know, I'd be capable of doing, and you know, whenever Dustin has the time, you know, I don't want to take his time. I know he has his own set of priorities, so whenever he has his time, he can review my latest push to the. There's a bigger there's how to describe this. If you get a list, query.list, the objects are not fully filled in. So I was making a lazy load thing for that. So I'm mainly waiting on that. So whenever it's a priority, you know, I am. Other than that, I can't say anything in particular.
Oh, this is super exciting. As I mentioned, I've been working on a demo of the actual Python client in Jupyter Notebooks, and I literally had to work around the fact that we don't have lazy loading for components from list. And so this would actually be really, really helpful for me. And so this, yeah, anything we can do to get this in, I'll see if Dustin's actually out today, but we will sort of see if we can't get this reviewed and merged in the near future. But this is really, really cool. Wow, this is like literally exactly what I needed while I was working on this.
Well, good. Maybe,
awesome.
Yeah, maybe I'll make
cool.
sure to like rebase to make sure it's ready to go while we're waiting.
And ready to be reviewed and sort of on deck. But yeah, this is an amazing contribution. Thank you so much for this. This is like a great set of concepts just to have. Because yeah, I ended up sort of like doing query list and then piping that to query get, like doing an iteration, list comprehension, then sent that to query get to be able to sort of get everything, which is obviously overfetching like crazy. And so the idea that we can just have like a lazy load of specific components or even a lazy load of the entire data set would be an awesome addition.
Well, cool.
Cool. So yeah, it's really, really helpful. And just looking through this PR, this looks like a lot of really great back and forth is happening surrounding the actual structure of the code. And yeah, I think this looks like a great thing we should get merged, but let's make sure we get it right and get it in. Yeah, just want to say thanks again for doing this. I know we've sort of like been trying to find the right place for you to sort of contribute something, and this really feels like a great piece. Wow.
Cool.
Awesome. I think that kind of covers it. I think we're a little light today. We do have a massive conversation we have to have about identity and authorization, but that I think has to wait for us to write a little more spec. But I think the one high level update for anybody paying attention would be the value of this is going to be on the quest for private data. And so this month we're delivering the spec on private data and how it's going to look and how it's going to work. And this being able to make authorized requests is something that we've started doing now. And so the latest release of Query, we've actually just shipped. I totally forgot to mention, Ramfox landed a bunch of stuff that allows you to restrict, write an access control document for your remote. We talked a little bit about that in the call on Monday, and it's now live and in a production release. And so you can write a file, and that file can decide who can and cannot push to your remote, which is really important, because if you don't have that, then it's either everyone or no one. And so that's actually the beginning of our whole conversation around private data, because as soon as you can restrict things, that's effectively a couple of important steps down the road of being able to lock something down completely. But the team needs a little more time to do some research. That research is going to appear on the RFC's repo, whether it's actually there or whether it's just there and linked to somewhere. We will actually have an RFC or some sort of spec coming forth on private data in the near future, starting with authorization. But yeah, there's lots to talk about there, and we need to do a little research first. So that kind of covers everything I wanted to cover. Does anybody have anything else?
No, I guess I'll just make a generic plug. Query super user Christos published a great blog from which kind of serves as a testimonial for using Query within Jupyter Notebook, along with some other tools they use like Plotly and Pandas. So I will link to that video in this description. But sorry, not in addition to the blog post, we talked to Christos about this work in Monday's Using Query call. Oh, perfect, thanks. Yeah, here's the blog. And so if you're considering kicking the tires on some of the things you've learned from this video and that, this is a great blog post to walk through. So we want to make sure people get a chance to see it.
Lovely. Cool.
Cool.
Well, thanks so much for joining, everyone. Unless anyone has any other questions, I think we can call this end of business for building Query. Cool.
All right.
Have a lovely weekend, everybody.
Take it easy.